stripping the loose. Used to dance in the club right across from my school. I said dance, nah, fuck. Don't get it confused. Had to set the record straight cause bitches love to assume. Mama couldn't give it to me, had to get it in shoes. Lord only knows how I got it in shoes. I was covered in dollars, now I'm dripping in jewels. A bitch played with my money, might have spit in my food. Bitches hated my guts, now they swear it was cool. Went from making tuna sandwiches to making the news. I started speaking my mind and tripping my views. Real bitch, only thing fake is the boobs. Get money, go hard, I'm motherfucking right. Never been a fraud in my motherfucking life. Get money, go hard, damn fucking right. Stun on these bitches out of motherfucking spite. Ain't no running point, well for nothing to glory. I ain't telling y'all to do it, I'm just telling my story. I don't hang with these bitches cause these bitches be corny. And I got enough bras, y'all ain't gotta support me. I went from rag to riches, went from wig to lit, nigga. Only person in my fam to see 6 figures. The pressure on your shoulders, feel like boulders. Where you gotta make sure that everybody's straight. Bitches stab you in your back while they smiling in your face. Talking crazy on your name, trying not to catch a case. I waited my whole life just to shit on niggas. Climb to the top floor so I can spit on niggas. Said I was just trying to chill and make bangers. Tell all these old bitches they in danger. The thing on my hip with bitches in the shape. That's what I call a fucking West trainer. Who gon' run up on who and do what? I think y'all got the story screwed up. I came here to bar, is you nuts? I don't want your punk ass man, I'm too tough. I'm the one that's killing shit, hands down. If you got a problem with me, say it now. Cause I don't wanna hear no sneak dissing. Especially not for one you weak bitches. I'm on girl like I'm the stoplight. I'm stepping out every day, prom night. So if it's all love, show me love then. Cause you ain't on the bitches, what it sound like. Low, it's how I give it up, nigga. Hoodie, low, it's how I'm pulling up. Just cause I've been on the road, don't mean I've been on the run. And you won't have to learn to hold your tongue or hold the gun. And we all know you ain't that type. I smack you in the bitch that you act like. I started getting money, bitches upset. They remind me of my pussy, bitches mad tight. Nails done, hair lit, keep them both face. I'm through shining with them, rolling bun face. Headshot, headshot, tell them go straight. And no bitch spitting like this and so late. I don't trust no nigga, I don't fear no bitch. Whole life been through some fucked up shit. They say I'm cool that, oh, I'm cool this. When you see what I see, you end up like this. I walked into the label with a check at. Cardi B on the charts and expect that. Where that bitch that was claiming she a threat. I'ma put a Louboutin with her neck. Yeah, say I'm too ratchet, they say I act wild. I'm started with the phone like a badass shout. She call me step for once, tell him try that now. Cardi B, no C, let that bad shout. Man, I said we gon' win. Let me down 9 times, but I get up 10. Look myself in the mirror, I said we gon' win. Let me down 9 times, but I get up 10. Look myself in the mirror, I said we gon' win. Let me down 9 times, but I get up 10. Yeah. But I get up 10. Let me down 9 times, but I get up 10. Bitch, I'ma make a fucking feel me. Said I'ma do a broken feel me. I'ma make a fucking feel me. Said I'ma do a broken filthy. We gon' win. Let me down 9 times, but I get up 10. Yeah. I said we gon' win. Let me down 9 times, but I get up 10. Bitch.
What's going on, Conscious Crew? Welcome to another riveting episode of the Consciouztv platform, girl. Okay. Miss Brittany Griner is down 10, but girl, we gotta pray that she's still gonna win because it's nuts out here. Okay. I am I have a bit of a hangover. I am recovering from a long night of girl shaking my ass and drinking shit I can't spell. So pray for me too. Okay. Now, before we get into the minutia, as my boy YB would say, you got the thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up this video. We just got off of a live stream regarding some updates on the rapper Takeoff. They definitely have a perpetrator or a suspect in custody that is being charged for his death. That whole situation is very interesting. Make sure you guys check out that live stream after you are done here. And before we get into the minutia, please thumbs up this video. Not only does this protect the live stream, that not only does it also help algorithm, but also it triggers up the notification system so that all other unsuspecting conscious crew members can join us for this riveting dialogue. Also, make sure that you guys are subscribed, because if I like it, you're going to freaking love it here. And shout out to all the new subbies. Also, make sure that you have your notification bell set to all, because you never know what day or hour the king is kinging, girl, because I'm willing to king even when I'm halfway hung the fuck over, girl, because that's just how much I fuck with y'all. Okay, on period. And also make sure that you guys share this stream out. I cannot do this alone. I absolutely require, demand, and need your participation to make our kingdom here grow and expand, so that we can continue to have reach and we can have influence and we can step up the things that we have the capacity and the anointing to actually do. Okay, we just have to put in the work to get things where they need to be gotten. Okay, so your subscriptions and your shares and your thumbs up directly contribute to the growth of this platform. Okay, I'm only one part of the piece, honey. Okay, I only can do the content and do my fair share of promoting, but you guys are also like the fire behind that rocket, and it only really lifts up off the ground when you guys come through and you also participate in the promotion and growth of the platform. Okay, so my growth here is a direct reflection of you guys' passion and support of the platform as well, and thank you for all of it. Now that we've gotten all of that out the way, let's go ahead and run our beautiful. It's still my motherfucking birthday, okay? So don't shy away from sending me all the love and love bombing me all in the DMs and love bombing me all in the emails and love bombing me all up in the comment section, girl, because you know the way that God is rapturing people about this world in one way or a damn another, child. CTV may not be here next year. CTV may be gone over to glory before 2023, girl. So yeah, that's the love me while you got me, baby, because God only give us one time to do this, girl. So this is the only time in existence that I'm ever going to be CTV. This is the only time I'm ever going to be CTV. If I'm coming back in another carnation, I'm not coming back as Davion. I'm not coming back as Consciouztv. I may be an Indonesia woman in my next incarnation. I may be, I may come back as a deaf Nigerian in my next life. God fucking knows what my soul signed up for. I don't know what type of experience I'm going to have, what type of human experience. I may be handicapped or disabled in my next experience. I may be of another ethnicity, of another sex. I mean, shit, bitch, I might be a whole fucking plant. I might be a tree, bitch. I don't know what the fuck it gives, okay? The multiverse is very weird, girl. So this is it, girl. We got one time to make history as who we are. So we got to do it all and do it all now. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this commentary. All donation information, all Cash App, Patreon, PayPal, all that stuff is in the description box below. And I thank you guys in advance. And with no further ado, let's go ahead and push the hell on through.
I know a place where you can recharge your soul.
Baby, that's Consciouztv.
And in the midst of brokenness, he gon' see your asshole.
Baby, that's Consciouztv.
You gon' heal, you gon' laugh and catch a little shade.
Ooh, girl.
Y'all know he be slaying, y'all better stop playing. Come hear what he's saying.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, let me shout out some of my folk, girl. I didn't get to speak to some of y'all in the last live. What's going on, my beautiful Usher Ray? What's going on, Jay? Hey, Coco. What's going on, Mary? Hey, Ebony. What's going on, Kings and Queens? Hey, Caitlin. What's going on, Jason Elliott? She had poor timing. That's all. That's all. In other times, she would gotta pass. Oh my God, I agree. Yeah, because she got caught up right in the crossfire of this Ukraine and Putin and America thing, and it just was literally like the stars could not have been any more unaligned, you know, for Britney than what they were. I mean, crazy. Such a shame, US. Yes. What's going on, Carl? What's going on, Tracy? Hey, Ebony. Hey, No Struggle. Hey, Tiger Eye Oracle. Hey, Boo. What's going on, Ian Gardner? Hey, Nah Love. Hey, Boo. What's going on, Durger? Hey, the Lisa D Delight Show. Hey, Boo. Hey, Palace A. Is it Palace A? What? Palace A. Palace A. Palace A. Palace A. I'm gonna say Palace A, girl. Don't. Not today. What's going on, JT? Hey, Caroline. So you guys know that WNBA All-Star Brittany Griner case seems to be coming bleak by every waking second. And most of you know by now that the two-time Player of the Year athlete was imprisoned over a marijuana-infused vape pen that was deemed as drug smuggling under Russian law that led to her being sentenced to 9 years in a Russian woman's facility. Despite the outcry from Britney's wife, activists, politicians, celebrities, and athletes alike, Russia has been moving forward to merging Britney into Russia's sentencing by restricting her to one of Russia's most notorious penal colonies. And you'll learn here just how worse is for the basketball star. What's going on, Zero Manifested? Hey, Tanisha Talks with Tees. Child, this is an absolute tragedy. I came across this article, and I think that it was definitely worth noting because there are definitely a lot of people who just feel like she should have known better, that if you do the crime, you do the time. Well, this article is going to show you why you are a complete idiot if you are saying any of those things. This article is going to make it clear to you why you are the devil's stepchild if you believe in any kind of way that what's happening to Brittany Griner is remotely justifiable, appropriate, or even humane. Okay? Because it transcends all of those things that people are placating to rationalize what is happening to her. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. Okay, this article gathers everybody asses up. Okay, this is courtesy of azcentral.com, and it reads, I'm wasted. Okay. Only women who suffered in Russian prisons can know Brittany Griner's agony. The Phoenix Mercury star now languishes in one of Russia's worst prisons. Here are the conditions Brittany Griner likely faces in IK2. Okay, the story of Brittany Griner may ultimately turn out to be an historic marker that shows just how completely ignorant Americans were of their world in the early 21st century. It may show how the people of this country were so removed from history and hard facts. We could not comprehend the story of a Phoenix pro basketball player taken prisoner by the Russians. This is not a story about a woman who did the crime and now must do the time. If you believe that, you're not only a fool, you're a mean and ignorant lout. Nor is this the story of U.S. indifference to women of color or LGBTQ people, or some sign that we need to reform America's draconian marijuana laws. If you believe that, you're indecent. You're exploiting someone else's suffering to advance your politics. The Brittany Griner story is really an old story, a soul-crushing tale of how historic events are indifferent to the agony of a single human being. Brittany Griner could spend her life in prison. We all know Griner's predicament could end tomorrow with the U.S.-Russian prisoner swap. But what few are saying and must know is that it might not ever happen, that Brittany Griner is caught in the awakening gears of a changing world and could conceivably spend the rest of her life in captivity. even before the Russians seized upon her as a bargaining chip exactly 1 week before its February 21st invasion of Ukraine. People were writing and speaking about what she is facing. They are the only people who truly understand Brittany Griner. They're women, they're mostly Russian, and they have endured one of the worst penal systems on earth, the Russian Gulag. After Griner's sentence, Russian media plays the international victim card. They know that what is in store for her is utterly hair-raising, a misery that few civilized people will ever know or comprehend. Wait a minute, you say the Gulag? Isn't that a relic of Soviet communism and Alexander, not going to pronounce that name, and One Day in the Life of Ivan, not going to pronounce that name either? No, the Russian Gulag lies, and Brittany Griner is trapped in its gear train. Quote, our prison system was never reformed, said Nadia, a member of the Russian punk band and activist group Pussy Riot, one of Griner's fiercest advocates. Shout out to Pussy Riot. In March 2012, Nadia was arrested with other members of her band after protesting 40 seconds against Vladimir Putin's Russia at Moscow's Cathedral of Christ the Savior. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison for protesting, you guys. Quote, there was no period after Gulag time, she told the Oxford Union Society. There was talk of reforming Russian prisons, but they never did it. That's why we still live in barracks, still live like slaves. 100 women are sharing 3 toilets, and you can imagine what kind of mayhem that causes in the morning. It's no fun. Jan, writing in 2019 for the Center for Eastern Studies, noted that most Russian penal colonies and prisons were built back in Stalinist times. Despite several attempts to reform the prison system in Russia, they still resemble the Soviet Gulag. Human rights violations and torture are common. If Russian prisons are bad, Griner is getting the worst of it. She is serving her 9-year sentence in IK2, part of a notorious system of Russian penal colonies near Mordovia, a region about 300 miles east of Moscow. The London Guardian reports, quote, the prisons were built in the early 1930s as part of the Gulag system of the Stalin era and together make up one of the largest penal complexes in Europe. Griner was sent to Russia's worst penal colony. Griner was arrested and later convicted of possessing vape cartridges with tiny amounts of marijuana, yet this is immaterial. Her sentence is a sham because there is no Russian justice system. In 2016, the acquittal rate in Russia's criminal courts was a merciless 0.36%, reports the new commentary site Riddle. The prison where Griner is serving her sentence cares nothing about justice or human dignity. When Pussy Riot learned where Griner was headed, it tweeted out to its 243,000 followers, quote, Brittany Griner was transported to IK2, Mordovia, the worst penal colony in Russia. Nadia told MSNBC, quote, I'm terrified that Brittany Griner was moved to IK2. I was protesting terrible conditions in my penal colony, but I know about every chief official who works at IK2, and I know exactly what human rights abuses they perform. I know exactly what human rights abuses they perform on a daily basis and the kinds of tortures that they use against prisoners. It has become a common phrase amongst Russian inmates that, quote, if you haven't served time in Mordovia, you know nothing about prison. Jeleny, a former government minister in Saratov, a port city on the Volga, served 3.5 years in Moldova for abetting commercial bribery. Quote, when the girls find out they're going to Mordovia, they cut their wrists, do everything possible, get sick, swallow nails, just so that they don't have to go there, she told Radio Free Europe. Prisoners are punished psychologically. In a September 2013 letter, Pussy Riot's Nadia described how Russian internment is not just a prison of walls and barbed wire. It's a prison of forgotten history, of remote geography, a prison of the mind and of physical deprivation, a prison of concentric circles that surround each inmate and make their lives a living hell. The female wards of Mordovia are caught in a medieval system that most of the rest of the world has left behind many decades ago. To demonstrate that point, Galina told the stories of the cats. Listen to this, you guys. In Russian prisons, cats are common because the places are overturned with vermin. Mice lived with us. Rats lived with us in the industrial zone. Before you went into the bathroom, you need to knock. There were special poles for that, so that the rats would scatter. You understand? To attack the problem, the prisons introduced cats to kill the rats, but the cats would reproduce and create their own problem, she told Radio Free Europe. The Russians solved that by gathering up the kittens and throwing them in a sack and then into a furnace. Starved for companionship, Russian women inmates grew fond of the cats. There is nothing more dear to the inmates than these kittens and cats, but they can also be used for punishment. So if you sold badly today, then we will burn the cats. They don't punish one or two people. They punish a whole brigade. Probably fucked that word up. They engage in slave labor. The sewing is a reference to the day labor of Russian women prisoners. In her letter on prison conditions, Nadia wrote, "My brigade in the sewing shop worked 16 to 17 hours a day from 7:30 to 12:30 a.m. At best, we get 4 hours of sleep a night. We have a day off every month and a half. We work every Sunday." You guys, this K2 female penal colony that Brittany is at is literally one of the worst. People have self-deleted, swallowed nails, cut their wrists, injured themselves just to avoid being sent here. The colony is filled with rats and cats. Cats that also overpopulate as a result of being brought in to kill an overpopulation of rats that, when become too populated, are actually thrown into a sack and thrown into a furnace. These cats become essentially pets for a lot of these female prisoners who have to watch their pets be burnt alive. There's 3 toilets to 300 women. Could you imagine sharing? Could you imagine having an orchestrated time to use the restroom? Being female and dealing with menstrualing, dealing with periods, dealing with all type of God knows what. Only being assigned to a certain time of the day where you can utilize the restrooms. And there's only 3 fucking toilets to 300 women. And you're going to learn more about those restroom conditions as well. But on top of that, you work 16 to 17 hours a day sewing. Sewing on archaic machinery at that. They're going to get into that as well. You only get about 4 hours of sleep. And you only have a day off every month and a fucking half. And that's just the start of it. The sewing machines are ancient and dangerous, she wrote. Quote, "Your hands are pierced with needle marks and covered in scratches. Your blood is all over the work table, but still you keep sewing." Galina explained how the old industrial sewing equipment makes it very easy to make a mistake. The saw cuts the fabric along a chalk line continuously. God forbid if the saw cuts somewhere else and not on the chalk line, then all 100 cuts are ruined. I can say that fingers on the saw are chopped off. Cut, blood flows. This is definitely unsafe, requiring some training. And could you imagine the infections that would come from a cut, from a machine that's not being cleaned, machine that also has other people's DNA and blood on it? And you're already living in a nature-like fucking environment. Very little medical aid. I mean, you're living in a no man's wasteland. Miss a quota, and not only you, but your entire baggage of prisoners is, I'm gonna change that word. Your entire bundle of prisoners, your entire a dorm of prisoners is punished. This breeds anger and resentment. Quote, prisoners are always on the verge of breaking down, screaming at each other, fighting over the smallest things. Just recently, a young woman got stabbed in the head with a pair of scissors because she didn't turn in a pair of pants on time. These women are in here experiencing PTSD fucking D. They're out of their minds. They're driven to the brink of insanity. They have no peace. They're operating on 4 hours of sleep per day, working 16, 17 hours a fucking day, starved, hungry, living with rats, cats, feces. Oh, and they're going to get into the fucking hygienic part and the food conditions. You're dealing with everybody's insanity, everybody's mental illness, everybody's attitude, and the guards are even worse than the actual fucking prisoners. Prisoners turn prisoner against prisoner. Those who disobey orders can be sent outdoors in the Russian winter. Check this out, what she's about to say about what they did to a disabled female prisoner. Nadia told of one woman from a dorm of disabled and elderly prisoners who was punished this way for an entire day. Her frostbite was so bad, they had to amputate her fingers and one of her feet. One of the age-old techniques of Russian prisons is to turn prisoner against prisoner. In their book, quote, Before and After Prison Women's Stories, a group of Russian sociologists explained that the heavy surveillance in Russian women prisons is enhanced by a less formal system of snitching. The system of squealing and earning high remarks with the management for snooping on others, which was originally created in the Gulag, has effectively survived until the present day. St. Petersburg sociologist Yelena told Moscow Times. The result is an inmate population that doesn't trust one another and routinely acts out in retribution. Women are cruel, and they are extremely nasty to each other, vicious as hell, said Yulia, a prisoner whose story is included in the book. Quote, if you are ill or weak or old, they will be sure to exploit you, humiliate you, harass you, and sometimes just for the hell of it. We were working in a sewing workshop in the colony, and some vicious inmates would cut the items that the girls and my team made so that they would fail to fulfill the plan. You guys know what those punishments are. They put you outside in that blistering Russian weather, not giving a damn if you die from hypothermia. You could have frostbite induced and they amputate. Could you imagine even being amputated by whatever medical system that is available to these women when severe injuries happen? Disgusting. It's all designed to dispirit inmates. The cruelty starts at the very beginning when Veronica Kras entered prison in IK-14 in Mordovia in 2014. Her eyes were drawn to the words on the entrance wall, "Welcome to hell." When someone enters the colony, there's a lineup in the yard, she told Radio Free Europe. Everyone yells, fresh meat has arrived. The new inmates react, of course, to this. They are afraid. Soon they will be caught up in a system that deprives them of privacy, self-respect, food, and their own humanity. The food and hygiene were unspeakable, wrote Nadia. It was degrading and humiliating experience and a great trauma for everyone who went through it. Food consisted of rotten, slimy, blackened potatoes, stale bread, and watered down milk and rancid porridge, she said. Did you guys hear that? 17-hour long work days, 14 hours of sleep, 3 toilets to 300 women, living with rats and cats, dealing with the psychotic episodes of women who are all on the verge of insanity, and guards who are equivalent to medieval mad scientists, living in squalors of filth, hellish like hygiene. Could you imagine the hygiene? Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Along with cat feces and rat feces and everything else. And then the food that you have to, that your body has to extrapolate for energy and nutrition to survive 17-hour long work days and in all these other unhealthy, freakish ass conditions is slimy, blackened potatoes, stale bread, and watered down milk and rancid porridge. Know what Griner is facing before you speak. In her prison, Galina said it was awful and really felt like barracks. And there was only one toilet with 2 toilets in it per one detachment of 300 people who had a total of a half an hour in the morning, 30 minutes to use this toilet. That's what 300 people had in total collective. It was surreal. We hardly ever had hot water, and the toilets, if they broke, would not be repaired. It was a concentration camp, wrote Nadia in her letter. Life in the colony is constructed in such a way as to make the inmate feel like a filthy animal who has no rights. When the pipes get clogged, urine bursts forth from the washrooms and feces fly. We have learned to clean the sewage pipes ourselves, but the results do not last long. The pipes get backed up again. The colony does not have a cable for cleaning pipes. We can wash our clothes once a week in a small room with 3 faucets from which cold water drips, you guys. Flying feces and urine. Cleaning sewage pipes yourself. Would these people even know the difference between a spiritual hell, the supernatural version of hell, and the earthly one? Because a lot of what people experience in their death experiences who go to hell describe these literal same experiences. A rancid, hyper extreme ass, disgusting, filthy environment where the smells alone are enough to traumatize you. The landscape is that of death and decay. This is crazy. In women's prisons, toilets and showers do not have partitions. The sociologist, not going to say her last name, said that the devastating lack of personal space was intentional. Whether you are eating or working or sleeping or showering, and even when you are using a toilet, you are exposed to others. When I discovered during the course of my research how they renovated a toilet in one colony, I was stunned. In front of a row of holes in the ground, not separated by partitions, they placed a large mirror. I am still not fully convinced that the person who was responsible for that interior design solution was not, in fact, a moral sadist. A fucking demon. That's what they would have had to be. That's what this woman just said. That the interior design of these women's prisons, colonies, and concentration camps are that of demonic inspiration. They are designed to reinforce psychological deterioration. Before you condemn Brittany Griner for breaking Russian law, or before you use her story to score cheap political points, you need to understand what she is facing. You need to know that the one man who holds the key to her release, a tyrant named Vladimir Putin, is also the man most responsible for the barbaric conditions in which she now lives. One more article called The Gray Dynamics. The IK2 Correctional Colony. IK2 Corrective Colony number 2 of the Federal Penitentiary Service of Russia for Vladimir Oblast is located 60 miles east of Moscow in Pokrovsk. This Russian prison is a red zone corrective labor colony. This means that the prisoner's life is under the control of the administration of the correction camp. Could you imagine being at the beck and call of a human being's imagination and desire? There's no infrastructure to regulate dignity, safety, that you are just subjected to the emotions and the feelings and the desires of a human being. And there's nothing in between you and them. Nothing. I mean, you're essentially human trafficked. You're literally reduced to slavery, literal slavery. Get the American prison system out of your mind, which makes Russian prisons look like 5-star extended stays and the best resorts. The inmates live in barracks. They spend most of their time working within the prison, often described as a tough penal camp with very strict rules. To put it mildly, the IK2 prison correction camp is one of the most feared and brutal prisons in Russia. It aims to weaken its prisoners through psychological torture and the law of silence. In 1974, the USSR Ministry of Internal Affairs created a labor and medical dispensary where alcoholics and drug addicts were sent to be cured through hard labor. In 1994, the head of the Internal Affairs Directorate of the Vladimir Region Administration decided to reorganize the dispensary. It then became the Correctional Colony number 2 on the 19th of August, 1996. The correction facility accepted its first prisoner, and now it has the capacity for 794 inmates, almost 1,000 people. The Correctional Colony consists of a series of buildings made of gray bricks, watchtowers, and a gold-domed Orthodox church. An iron fence topped with barbed wire surrounds the whole colony, which is part of a network of 700 prisoners. The IK2 is currently hosting 800 people, inmates. The structure comprises 12, so that technically it's overpopulated. The structure comprises 12 different units, one with ease conditions, 10 with normal conditions, and the last one with strict conditions. There is also a paint shop, a sewing production in the industrial zone, an assembly shop, and a carpentry. Most of these prisoners were on theft and drug charges. Wow. But sometimes IK2 also hosts political prisoners and national activists. Life in the camp. The IK2 not only is one of the most brutal prisons in Russia, but it is the toughest in terms of breaking to the people. All the prisoners have to go through psychological tortures with the final aim to break and weaken them. These tortures consist of isolation, deprivation of the outside, surveillance, punishments, and the prohibition of talking with other inmates. The inmates are not only victims of psychological tortures, but also physical ones. Many prisoners, especially common criminals, were beaten and sexually assaulted while they were detained in the IK2. Medical negligence is very common. When the prisoner arrives at the facility, the guards confiscate his medical supplies. In the event of illness, the medical staff only gives painkillers without a proper assessment. The process of isolation and dehumanization starts at the colony's gate. There, each inmate, when arrived, has to crouch and say his name, last year of birth, and sentence. Within the colony, there are some prisoners called goats or activists. They get privileges such as a shower, conjugal visits, and better food in exchange for spying on the other inmates. Cooperating with the administration and reporting any kind of incorrect behavior is also well rewarded, as we just read in the previous article. This is how they survive. According to the former inmates, the day starts at 6 a.m. All the inmates have to recite the Russian national anthem. To follow, there is physical exercise. Prisoners have to memorize the list of the prison employees and make and unmake the beds for 3 hours. The activists are the ones who usually assign these tasks to the inmates. They also have the power to beat and search an inmate. Prisoners also have to stay on their feet until 10 p.m. when they have to go to sleep. The inmates rarely have personal time. Sometimes they can sit and read for half an hour, but most of the time, political inmates do not enjoy this privilege. The routine is either working all day or spending many hours watching government advertisements on the TV without looking away from the screen and with their hands tied behind their backs. The inmates cannot receive emails, and the prison guards have to read and check all the letters that the inmates receive. This process can also last weeks and sometimes months, and its purpose is to isolate even more the prisoner from the outside world. The inmate has 30 minutes a week to reply to all letters, and a guard has to sit with him and check what he writes. There are cameras and guards everywhere, and the prison guards monitor the conversations on the phone and also the ones with lawyers. These phone calls are allowed twice a month, and they cannot last no more than 15 minutes. Nothing of what happens in the colony can be said or written to the loved ones. So we just learned that Brittany Griner, with everything that was just said about what she's living now, 16-hour work days, barbaric living conditions, living amongst people who have already lost their fucking mind and are about to any fucking moment, eating rancid porridge, rotten blackened potatoes, watered down milk, and stale bread, that she only has access to a phone to speak with her lawyers twice a month. And those calls are heavily surveillanced. She can't even speak or write to her loved ones or her legal team to a point of, she can't even describe to a point of satisfaction and accuracy what she's going through, because that would be in violation. She has to pretend that things are as decent as they are. She has to leave it to her loved ones and her country to be doing the research to find out what she can't say in order to have a full picture of what she's even going through. And she only has 30 minutes to respond to God knows how many letters that may have been accumulated that she may not even get until 6 months from the time that they were even sent. Because, of course, all of this is about psychological warfare. So the system of timeliness is not something that's of a priority. They make prisoners wait on the letters from their loved ones. Could you imagine not hearing from anybody in your life for months, for a year? Could you imagine being the person, being Brittany's wife, being the cousin, the best friend? Could you imagine being not just Brittany, but being the person that has to live with being in this luxurious country with all your freedom and having to somehow oppress the the psychological and psychic impressions you have in your mind of what your loved one is enduring while you are eating a decent meal, while you are sitting feet up at a beach, while you are listening to the new Beyonce album, that the person or persons you love the most is somewhere living in the physical version of hell on earth. Could you imagine actually having to live and deal with the weight of that? How do you not have survivor's remorse? How do you not constantly feel a sense of guilt when you have someone or someone's in your life? Or to just even know as it that people are suffering in this way. And yes, there are definitely American prison systems that are that are a damn near equivalent, for sure. And this is why so much conversation is happening around prison reform right now, because we have very similar conditions in the prison facilities here for our inmates. This is why you have abolitionists rising up. This is why you have conversations around the uh, obliteration and abolishment of the prison system are heavy in this time. You have coalitions of people who are addressing the injustices and the inhumane treatment of said criminals. But we'll get into that in a minute. Political inmates. The IK2, one of the most brutal prisons in Russia, has hosted political activists and enemies of Putin's regime. In this facility, the guards want to deprive the inmates of their voice and want to isolate them from the outside world. Konstantin Kontov, arrested in 2019, an opposition activist. He spent 1.5 years in the IK2, where he said he was under constant intimidation and isolation. After his release, he said the most of the inmates live in constant fear of breaking the rules or doing something that goes against the administration. Perry Verenzen, in prison between 2019 and 2012 for embezzling funds while working at the Yokos Oil Company, wrote a memoir and stated that his time in the IK2 was very difficult. The colony is extremely violent, cold, humid, and is located close to a swamp. In every building, there are only 5 bathrooms that have to be shared with 60 inmates. He described his time in the correction colony as a time characterized by stress, tortures, bullying, and humiliation. Both Kotovo and Perry testified that they were never subject to severe physical violence from guards, probably due to their public profile. On the other hand, they both saw and heard prison guards beat other inmates. So let's say that Brittany Griner spends the next 6 months or a year here before she can be released. Hypothetically, let's say she spends the next 2-3 years. Let's say she does the whole 9-year sentence. What's so fucked up and tragic about this, and I'm sure that these people who have had lesser sentences, who only had to do a year or 2 or 3, can attest to this, that Brittany Griner's fight will only be beginning, because now it's not just about surviving the physical version of this prison. She's now going to have to combat surviving this prison psychologically for the rest of her life, even if her body is going to be free of this prison. She's going to be a PTSD victim. How do you the level of counseling and therapy this woman would have to endure in order to reclaim some sense of normalcy in her mind and to heal the things she has been through, that she's had to internalize, that she's had to ruminate over, the nightmares she's going to feel the full effects of this thing emotionally, because sometimes when you're surviving something, because it is survival, your mind and your emotions go into preservation mode in order to preserve the soul of the person. So you don't even really experience the totality of what you are experiencing as a result of a survival mechanism, which is why PTSD typically sets in severe ways when it comes to our military, when it comes to our veterans, when it comes to our war prisoners, when it comes to etc. Because when you then get relieved physically from the point of profound stress, that opportunity to relax now actually allows all the shit you've been suppressing, all the shit you've been pushing down, all the shit your body been protecting you from, now has an opportunity to completely consume you. Kind of like the roof collapsing in now. And I don't know what's going to be worse, the physical or the internal. Because sometimes surviving the shit emotionally and mentally, even if the body is free, actually is worse for some people than the actual experience. But that, once again, is because their mind was regulating the experience and shielding the person from the totality. This is why you have a lot of soldiers who can endure Vietnam. They endured their whole tour. They done went and fought a war on terror 4 times, and then get back here in the States where they're free, where they're okay, where they have family, and then they off themselves. Which doesn't make sense on the surface, right? Like, well, damn, how could not being on the field and not being on tour be worse than actually being on those ground? How could you survive the immediate danger and the conditions and then fall victim when those conditions are removed? And it's because removing the body relaxes all the other mechanisms that are working to preserve as much of you as possible when you're in survival mode. But now that your body doesn't have anything to survive, all that shit you've been surviving emotionally and spiritually and psychologically has there's no barrier between you and the emotional and spiritual and mental impact of your experience. And that's what takes people out. Because it all finally comes down on they're able to feel everything that has happened now. Now that the body is not, now that the mind and the body is not working in overdrive to preserve you and offering some buffer between you and your experience, you're now completely exposed and vulnerable to your experience. So either way, this woman and all people in any similar conditions like her are going to have profound work ahead of them. This is horrific. And to be honest, I'm actually more shook at what's going to happen to her once her body is free. And yes, I'm speaking her freedom. I'm claiming her freedom. I'm claiming freedom, escapism, liberation for anyone who is imprisoned and is being held and treated in this way. But I'm more scared for her being free. And this is such a trickle domino effect, because if Brittany Griner's psychology is going to be altered due to the trauma inducing nature of her captivity then that means that even upon her freedom, especially if she's going to be left in these conditions for years upon years, it's no telling where she already is by now. I mean, she's probably at her strongest right now because hope hope is at its premium right now. Hope is at its premium. There's a potential prison swap, so she has things that are gluing her together, even though I'm sure she's falling apart as well. But she also has like gas in the tank to hold it together, to her best ability. But let's say she's hypothetically there, and then she obviously will be altered psychologically by her experience, depending on the severity of those alterations. This not only changes her, but her changing changes her relationship to everybody who loves her. So how do we know that Britney's wife is still going to have the same wife that she has now 9 years from now? It's possible that the wife may not even be able to know the woman that's going to be coming back to her. It's possible that the woman coming back to her may not even be able to integrate herself into a loving relationship, into her family life the way that she did. So the question becomes for Brittany's wife, of course, the family of Brittany will always be tied to her and stay connected to her no matter what. But the wife, because it's a intimate and a romantic relationship and is subjected to change for these very reasons, she may also have to start contemplating the possibility that her marriage may be forever different, and that she may, and that this marriage may not be something that is going to last until death does them part, depending on the way that Brittany Griner experiences her experience based upon who she remains to be or not be. This is a very fucked up, twisted, diabolical ass situation that affects everybody in Britney's life. Dmitry Demuskin. Dmitry, a national activist accused of inciting hatred, was imprisoned in IK2 for 2 years. He described his experience in the correctional colony as being like torture. He stated that he spent the first months of his imprisonment in the second sector. The sector is known amongst the inmates as Suka, bitch in Russian. Wow. Where the conditions were particularly harsh and difficult. Dmitry also said that inmates have to shave every day, but they cannot touch the razors. All the inmates are shaved by the activists, who oftentimes use razors as an instrument of torture. Paul Whelan, an American inmate accused of espionage, said that the guards in the prison were waking him up every 2 hours during the night just to check where he was or what he was doing. Alexei Navalny, founder of the Anti-Corruption Foundation, was sentenced in March 2021 to 3 years and 6 months in the IK2 correctional colony. Navalny was accused of failing to check in with the authorities while he was recovering in Germany from chemical poisoning. Through his lawyers, he reported that medical treatment was denied and that he is a victim of inhumane and unlawful treatment. Through an Instagram post, he also described the prison as a concentration camp. According to Kotov and other former inmates, Navalny won't be a victim of torture or beating due to his popularity. Nonetheless, the guards will isolate him and they will keep him away from other prisoners. You know what's funny about isolation? Is that isolation in the New Testament is cited also as one version of hell. The New Testament cites a few different versions of hell. One that includes the infamous welding and gnashing of teeth, the eternal worm. It also describes a extreme isolation into outer darkness, a total separation. The conditions that these people are experiencing are literally equivalent to attributes of what metaphysicians like Christ described as the supernatural hell. So when we're talking about a literal hell on earth, yeah, you can literally live hell on earth. The same principle is at work. Deprivation, isolation, torture and torment, constant harassment, intentional afflictions, abuse, sexually, all these things have been described. Now, the only thing that may seem to be some solace for Brittany is the fact that most of these high profile people were put in activist positions, etc., or their tortures didn't necessarily include physical abuse, but more so psychological. So Brittany may be able to avoid a lot of direct physical abuse and torture as a result of her status, because Russia knows that people are looking and aware and concerned about her as a result of her celebrity, which may offer her some sense of relief and solace, but not really, because they just crank up the other shit that they can do to you as a result. What we're talking about when it comes to the Brittany Griner case is not, as the AZ Central article stated, this transcends LGBT politics, this transcends politics, just transcends race politics, gender politics. We're talking about a system of inhumanity, period. And as you guys can see, whether you're talking about the female colonies or the male ones, they both include the same tortures and torments. And as the article read, most of these prisons are filled with Russians. So this is how they also treat their own. Their own. They are torturing and destroying Russians from the inside out. Who are there? So this is beyond race and gender and orientation and nationalism. Russia has an unregulated criminal justice system that allows it to ultimately do what the fuck it desires to people who become the intellectual goddamn property and content of the nation. And this is why they're able to get away with this. No check and balance, no nothing. We couldn't even imagine it, right? It's not even imaginable. There's no way for privileged people of any kind, anywhere, to even be able to relate emotionally. All you can do is imagine what the physical pain is. All you can do is relate to some of the physical torments. You know what it's like to be hungry. You know what it's like to be exhausted. You know what it's like to be beaten for some people. Well, you know, it's you can run into some of the physical shit, but there's not even a way to really fully conceive this. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable. And the worst part about this is I don't know what we can do about it. She's got to get out of there. But that's the thing. You know, it also is bigger, zero manifested than just her. Everybody has to get out of there. The entire Russian system has to be completely uprooted and overturned. And now I understand why a lot of countries be on a third world shit. Because the third world shit oftentimes is just the people versus the powers that be. Ray says that there is no way for the Red Cross to have access to prisoners unless Russia allows them. And that's what we want you to understand, Zero. Everybody outside of the Russian system is subjected to the Russian system. They don't have any obligations. They don't have to adhere to any protocols. They create the rules. You don't get in unless they want you in, and you don't get out unless they want you out. They control every facet of their system. They control who communicates. They control who doesn't. They control all privilege. They control all access. It's essentially a system that those on the outside and inside are powerless to unless you take a more aggressive solution toward the problem. And you turn shit up and out. You invade Russia as Russia has invaded Ukraine. When the system is completely narcissistic and sociopathic, unreasonable, irrational, unyielding, you can only regulate something like this by force. Start writing letters to Putin, ask forgiveness for her, but the letters must be respectful. But have you learned who Putin is? What his consciousness has the capacity to do? Do you think that this is a man that has a heart for the cries of the American people? If anything, Putin is internalizing the distress of the country that Brittany is a native to as a way to boost his own ego. He would be deviating from his egoic satisfactions by giving Brittany back. Putin loves the fact that America is crying over Brittany. He loves that he feels like he has the American government system by the balls because he has something that apparently we want. And the ball is in his court. He loves the fact that America is lining up how they can, what they can do to get Brittany back. Prison swap, excited. We're talking about people who are hungry and thirsty for power. They have fantasies of power. They get off over power, not over empathy, not over righteousness. These people do not experience any redemptive quality of any of that stuff. This is why countries go to fucking war. Because sometimes that's all that there is to do. And this is why I personally believe in the sword that Christ told Peter to put down. I believe there's a time and a place for negotiating. I believe that we should negotiate and we should play right and we should do right as long as there is space and opportunity within reason for reasonable conflict resolutions. But I am also a believer and a certified ass whooper. And I believe in solving things through goddamn violence and force as well. Because what I can never do is absolutely nothing. Nothing is not an option at all. Force might not need to be the first, second, or third option, but it needs to be optional. I'm not sure if Putin is even interested in any of the Russian prisoners we have here. I think he likes the position that he's in. And if the goal is to torture America and to humble America, and you know, we are one of the most powerful nations with one of the most powerful militaries in the entire fucking world. And Putin is on his Donald Trump shit and salivating at watching America have to bow down and kiss the fucking ring. Why would anybody give that up? Who is a full-blown, power-hungry demon in the goddamn flesh? I also want to say this, that even here, when we have conversations about abolishing the police task force or abolishing the prison industrial complex, that a lot of times those who are countering those conversations and who insist that we should punish, penalize, and put people away. And I'm also not arguing that there are exceptions to where we need to separate some people, especially considering the nature of the crime. But generally speaking, what I often hear from a lot of Americans is a lot of ego, a lot of Christian-based, motivated worldviewing. This idea of punishing is very attractive to Americans, mainly because the religion that's indoctrinated most of us has really prepped and lubricated our minds to think that punishment is redemptive. But everything about what abolitionists talk is about rehabilitation, restoration, not punishment per se. And you may feel that people should be held accountable for their actions, and they should. But what we have to also keep in mind when we are playing the judge, even as it relates to our own criminals and so-called wrongdoers, is that our form of justice also is supposed to be a total reflection of our moral compass. So you can't, what I'm saying is that you can't claim to be a decent human being, and you can't claim to have an empathy and to have the capacity for forgiveness and all of these things, and yet participate in an ideology that's practically contrary to that. And the principles of our prison industrial world is contrary to those virtues. We support the death penalty. We support mass incarceration. And then we throw people away for the things they've done, and we do not concern ourselves with the treatment and the conditions that those people are going through, because as far as we're really concerned in our subconscious, people are getting what the fuck they deserve. Even when the punishment doesn't even fit the fucking crime. And then we never consider that it's punishment and not rehabilitation. And we never question ourselves why we lean into punishing rather than restoring and rebuilding and reshaping. And how do we lose sight of that? When you have whole institutions of people, from Jehovah's Witnesses to Christians, who literally believe in going out into the rest of the world and restoring people and transforming sinners into saints. But then when it comes to the way that you view prisoners and criminals, all of that shit just goes out of the window. And it's almost as if you believe that that's a different situation from every other situation you are applying restorative justice to. And there isn't. And there isn't. Reiterating, as Ray is reiterating, you guys, the Brittany Griner case has nothing to fucking do with race, has nothing to do with orientation. Yes, it's being used as political motivations. It's being hijacked and being utilized in that way. But that was the whole point of us doing this live stream today. Like Ray said, there are more Russians in Russian prisons than there are outsiders and foreigners and Americans. And the whole point of you hearing from other Russian inmates, and the point of you knowing that most of Russian prisoners are filled with Russians, is so that you can see that this transcends race and orientation, that Russia does this to their own. This is not about any of the shit and any of the talking points of the political heads in this country, who of course is going to use that to their benefit and use that to push their own political aspirations and motivations, etc. But we're talking about, when we're talking about the barely existent criminal justice system of Russia, is just an entirely barbaric, inhumane system of enslavement and torture by sadists and wicked people. Just wickedness. Just wickedness. No, I don't. What do y'all think the solution is? Because y'all don't necessarily believe in going to war when power is unreasonable and only interested in sustaining that power by any means necessary, even if that power structure is willing to go to war with us. Because Americans are so passive and don't necessarily believe, allegedly, And that, what's the solution? What's the solution when you're when you're looking at a power that is only interested in sustaining and growing power, not distributing that power equally, not using that power necessarily for the greater good, but that power is self-motivated, the power is self-induced, self-contained, and everybody else has to pay the price for that power. If y'all are going to take force off the table, what's the solution? I heard, somebody suggested that we send a bunch of Christmas cards to Putin. That we write really nice letters to Russia's dictator. Do y'all want to write mass letters? I mean, since we don't do force, I mean, like what? Should we put on a parade, for Putin? Should we go learn some choreography? I mean, should we send him a bunch of Balenciaga? Maybe, he just doesn't know how much the new Versace sandals will, make him feel so much better. I mean, what's the solution here? Right, Zero. The irony of writing letters to a dictator. Vala says, I don't know, CTV. Is there a solution? Yeah, it is. The one that Americans never want to entertain, even when they can clearly see that a power structure is uncompromising and is determined to be incomparable. I know what the solution is in these situations. But we should mind our own business and question our own government, why they put us in the mess and expect us to fight him over our own. Wake up, we're being used. And we're not only talking about the Russian government. We don't even combat our own government sometimes in the only way that makes sense, because we're such a docile people, and then we wonder why we wrestle with the same political and governmental principalities and powers generationally. How are these powers sustaining generationally if the very mature, high vibrational way of dealing with things is the solution, but yet the solution ain't solutioning? The same governmental political principalities and powers that our children are inheriting, and their children, and we inherited the same demons that our parents fought and their parents fought, and yet we insist upon doing this shit the same way it's always been done. And then we have the audacity to know what the definition of insanity is. I think that sometimes we're just not honest about what sometimes the solutions need to be, considering the historic facts and the severity of that power and its impact on societies, cultures, people, creeds, etc. Nobody wants to get low vibrational in the name of righteousness, child. And I don't know what else then is going to be the case. Other than we're going to be here trying to think about how sweet we can make our letters to the Satanists and the Luciferians that run the fucking world. That we're going to try to be Christian toward non-Christians, that we're going to extend virtue to those who are void of it. And then hope for the best as the world becomes more poisoned and infiltrated by this insidious ass presence and energy and essence. And we're just going to cling tight and close our eyes and just hope for the best. As capitalism excels, as pale supremacy excels, as we enter into a type of communism ourselves, a type of socialist country ourselves. And then we're going to peek our heads out and scratch our heads and ask, how did we get here? We got here by essentially doing nothing. Because sometimes that's what doing things the mature way is an equivalent to. Essentially doing nothing. Britney was playing for Russia in her off season. Yep. Now she's playing. Now her season is 9 years. It's a failure of American capitalism that she had to be in Russia working anyway. If the WNBA paid better, she wouldn't be in this mess. That's very true. Another part of the problem, because all of these things, the capitalism of America gives birth to why Americans are as exposed to the circumstances they are as they are. America's landscape is the root of why Americans largely suffer in all the ways in which we suffer. But yet, we don't want to have a real confrontation and a real rise. A righteous, necessary confrontation with the power. We utilize its systems. We utilize its metrics. We kiss the ring. It's almost like when I think about voting in this country and all this shit, it reminds me of a rigged. It reminds me of like a rigged lottery machine. Like, how are you going to trust a system created by your oppressors and your manipulators and liars under the guise of democracy? That it's like the willingness to trust what's handed to you without ever considering who's giving it to you to begin with. It's weird. The whole shit is weird. It's weird. And we've been utilizing these same systems to change the world. And you know what's happening? Bill Gates and all of his Illuminati ass, adrenochrome, transhumanism as producing buddies are buying up all of the stock in the country, buying up all of the farmland in the country, getting in control of the food and the resources, introducing motherfucking GMO and everything else while we're sitting here voting a better world. Intervene. Okay. All right. Well, let's see if voting stops Dr. Fauci. Let's see if voting stops Bill Gates. Let's see if voting done, baby, because Trump apparently is responsible for an entire insurrection, and yet he will be running for president. And you know why demons are getting away with murder in this land? Because demons are running the land. And yet they convince you to trust in the systems they create for you to make you believe that these systems give you an opportunity to change the world, rather than you have some common damn sense and think for your fucking self and to see the big ass elephant in the room. Simplify your observations and see the fucking obvious and not the propaganda. Americans are weird. It's only a sad state of affairs by bowing down. I'm just gonna wait on the on the uprising. I'm just gonna wait on the purge. I don't know how much more has to happen. You know, I do know. I know for us. I can't speak for Russian and Asia and Africa. I know for us as Americans, I know what it's gonna take. Because we always have to be forced into things. It's going to take all the heartbreak in the world, all the fear in the world. It's going to have to take, like, the system is going to have to make us absolutely, unequivocally, and arguably a believer in its incompetence and in its nature. And do you know the fucked up thing about needing that much to be convinced of what's already plainly being done and demonstrated to your fucking face is all of the damage that's going to be done. By the time you turn around and see everything for what it is, when what it is has been what it was from day fucking one, and you can literally see the pathology of the truth of that generationally. Generationally, you can see it. The same truths, the same incompetence, the same shit generationally. But that's what Americans need. They got, look, it's a genius system, baby. They got us so cozy in our fantasies and in our ideals, not realizing that we have mostly constructed our reality out of ideas and not anything absolutely inherent. So, America, we don't want to give up the fantasy, child. We're going to hang on until ain't nothing to hang on. And then we're going to only want to fight when we're in free fall. And then we're also going to expect a savior. And we're also going to play the total victim when we made a choice to be fully compromised. I don't know what Bill Gates is. I know he's demon. I know Fauci is demon. I know Putin is demon. I know that these are demon institutions. I know that these are demon-infused government systems. I know that these are demon-infused social constructs. I know that these are demon hunger games. I know that this is demonic psychological and spiritual warfare. I know that this is demonic physical warfare. I know that the chemtrails and the GMO foods and the diseases are all demonically inspired and intentional. I know that our medical system sustains itself by only mastering treatments versus cures because money and greed and materialism are more important than the health and the well-being of the people that God have here. I know that the righteous and the unrighteous have two different goals, have two different assertions, have two different fantasies, have two different worldviews, have two different politics. I know that the righteous is not on the same page as the unrighteous. And I know that there's going to continue to be more suffering and Flint and this water issue, our our criminal justice system and its police brutality issue, over incarceration, mass incarceration issue, the lack of mental health resources available to Americans as suicidal ideation rises in this country for young Black Americans. Blocking legislation to free people of student loans and debt. The fact that it's not constitutional to relieve Americans. For not being able to pay back what was already overinflamed as a prices to begin with. What America says is, I'm going to penalize you for not being able to survive the extreme. I'm going to penalize you and bound you and punish you because you can't survive what's not sensible to survive. Because you can't survive the super unnatural. Hey, information man. We're going to create the struggle and then create the solutions that only offer relief, but in the underbelly only sustain the struggle because the system can only survive based upon a classism system of the have and the have nots. So there's no way in the philosophy and worldviews of the unrighteous can there ever be a sense of equality because the world that they want to create needs to only benefit people of a certain education, people of a certain financial status, people of a certain. And if you have everybody thinking that they're fucking kings and gods and goddesses and queens, who's going to placate from the bottom? Nobody. So hell no. We can't have the Vatican release all of those ancient scrolls that completely fill in the religious doctrine. Oh no, we have to keep the most significant parts of quantum physics, the most significant parts of the world's religious systems. We have to keep those things in unclassified places so that the people don't have an opportunity to fully self-actualize and to equalize the pendulum. So really, the world doesn't change until we're tired of things not changing. This all will be over when we are done with it. When we are done with the world, it'll be over. This world would be over. The elite don't have the resources or the fortitude or the bandwidth to sustain this reality. They need us to be complicit and to comply, which is why all of the psychological warfare, all of the medical warfare, all of the physical warfare is being done. They either need you out of the picture or a part of it. Because you, me, us, we are essential. This world, this version of the world, and this version of humanity cannot sustain itself if we throw it to the rubbish bin. And what's really tragic about the prophecies of the Bible is that, it talks about a third of the earth and a third of the resources and, a third of the population. It talks about so much destruction and pestilence and death and carnage and loss, and that it's only then does humanity, cry out from the realest place it can cry out from the depth of its being. And I find it preposterous that it's going to take that severity of loss and injury to our world. It's going to take that severity of injury to our people and our culture. That we're going to have to almost lose it all in order to gain everything back. And I used to not believe that because I used to have a lot of hope for the collective. I used to really believe that if we just knew the truth, then we would be proactive. But now I see that there's really been a great spell casting, and that spell has worked for centuries upon humanity. And that people really believe in the ideal of their gender and their sex and their race, that all of these respectability politics, all of these identity politics, and I think to myself, what a wicked scheme, but it worked. It worked. It worked. And all hell is busting loose as a result. It fucking worked. It worked. It worked. You know, we have our little outbursts, in pockets. But it worked. And I don't know what else to say. You know? I mean, keep working for change. Keep working toward change, because, I mean, what the fuck else are you going to do? So you continue to do what you have the power to do. You continue to change your life. You continue to affect change in whatever way, macro, micro, possible. But I really cannot believe that it actually worked. It really did. So, Brittany Griner, my heart goes out to her. I don't know what the solution is. We can try to write letters. Let's send Putin a Christmas card, as somebody suggested. Let's go vote something. Let's go vote so that some piece of paperwork can be created that somehow is supposed to create a reality. Let's go hold up signs somewhere and yell all day. Let's go fill up a bridge. I guess, I don't know. Let's package up some Balenciaga for Putin. Let's do everything but let's do everything but that other thing, maybe after enough Christmas cards to Putin, Brittany can be home in 15 years, I guess that's better than being home in 25, right? I don't know what else. I don't. I mean, this is what y'all like to do. Y'all like to be pleasant about everything. Y'all like to be, y'all like to vote. So I'm not that person. I've never preached that shit. So this is what y'all say works. So I'm. These are y'all solutions. So I don't. I mean, hey, have at it. Vote until you're blue in the face, and pray until you're blue in the face, and write letters until you're blue in the face, and tweet until you're blue in the face, and go argue with people in suits and ties until you're blue in the face, and we'll see what happens. Even though it's so funny. Our enemies in this world came literally into power by using one thing fundamentally across the board in tandem with other things, but they used force. And I just think that it's very interesting that we logically think that we can contend force by not utilizing any force. I don't recall the Native Americans and any of the indigenous Black people of America participating in a voting process that allowed colonizers to colonize here. I don't recall that. I don't recall any dictator anywhere asking or seeking permission to force feed and to dominate the spaces in which they went and conquered. I don't recall that. Let me not. It's Saturday. I gotta go. If I get access to a private helicopter or a warship, if any of y'all want to come with me to go to Russia to help break Brittany out of prison, then I'll let y'all know the time and the date when I have the resources. If I ever get them. You know, I'll bring them all back on the ship. I'll give them the ship hell. They can go wherever they, you know, they can pick their place of. In the meantime, I think we need to have a conversation about some unconventional methods of conflict resolution. I think that the window is closing on the opportunity to be effective, and we need to have all the conversation. We need to have like the whole conversation. So we need to also have the scary conversations. We need to put it all out there on the table. I also don't know how it's possible to do that through social media, because social media is very heavily regulated and doesn't even really allow you to have the whole conversation. So it's going to have to come back to some old school townhouse secret damn meetings in the church house, as because they got you censored up everywhere you go if you're using this highway and this byway. It ain't even but so much truth you can even teach through this particular highway and byway called the internet and social media. But we're gonna have to get our shit together, and we got to figure it out very quickly, because these satanic powers are light years ahead of us in terms of the world that they are creating for us. And you guys can see that it's getting worse. America typically had 300 to 400 mass shootings a year. We've doubled that over the past 3-4 years. We're now having damn near 1,000 mass shootings per year. Everything is going up. Autism diagnosis, dementia diagnosis. The life expectancy rate of Black men in this country. Breast cancer in Black women. Divorce. All the bad shit is up. Have you noticed? It's all up. The world is deteriorating. The kingdom is at hand. It was at hand 2,500 years ago. It's at hand today. The kingdom is at hand. Will we or won't we? And the time is always now, not later, not tomorrow, not next year, not when this happened, not when that happens. There was no such thing. The kingdom is at hand, and the time is now. The time is always right now. Leave your thoughts below. Thumbs up. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Later.